nutrition. Critical. Okay, we can move on from here. Okay, so this is the fun part. This is where it all starts. So this word neoteny is really interesting. Does anyone know what neoteny means?
New. New something.
Kind of. So the word neoteny refers to the youthful characteristics of a mammal, essentially. That's what that means. So a child, a newborn baby, is a neotonized human being. They are the most expressive, even when you're about 5 or 6, or even that point where you reach your first growth hormone hit, you know, anywhere between like 9 and 13, something like that. That's where you're expressing your most youthful qualities. That's where your hormones are typically their most neotonized, their most juvenile. We call growth hormones, we call youthening hormones, we call them juvenile hormones, because that's when you're in your juvenile state of being, right? And so that's a really interesting idea. One of the premises of my newer book is this idea of having the quality of youth and wisdom throughout your life, right? Typically we think that's either or. When you're younger, you have energy, you have more vibrance, you have more beauty, you're able to heal things quicker, right? But as you go through the aging cycle, then you forfeit all that in exchange for, hopefully, wisdom. But the idea here is that we want both. That's what longevity actually really is about. It's not about necessarily vanity, although we do want to express more radiance. We want to express our most beautification qualities as much as possible. Why not, right? If it's part of the human potential, then why not try to express that as much as possible for as long as possible? But essentially, it's not even about that. It's about reaching our human potential, right? And that's an integrative thing. It's your mental faculties. It's your physical faculties. Complete mobility. Lubricated joints. Having the full range of motion in your body all of your life, where you're not breaking down at all. The seams are not breaking down, right? So you essentially can go through your entire life in a fully functional body, fully elastic, fully malleable. You can do all the things, or most of the things, that you could do when you were 30, if you're 70. If you're 100, you could do what you could have done at 70, right? You guys see where that train of thought is? It's not about how long you live, it's about how the quality of the life in your years, right? Because it doesn't matter if you live to be 120, but you're on a dialysis machine, and you have diabetes, and you're just kind of like getting by, right? That, I mean, just unplug from there. That doesn't make any sense, right? One of the things that I got into years ago was this idea of we're living longer because the advent of technology, right? Sanitation technology, antibiotics, there's the pharmaceutical conversation that gets put out there, and just better living through chemistry, essentially, right? Now, I find this a really interesting conversation. When you really look at the statistics, and you look back on human history, you find that we're not really living any longer by ratio of the population compared to the population hundreds of years ago, maybe even thousands of years ago, than we ever did. When you factor out infant mortality deaths and infectious diseases. Those are the two primary things that would take people out, right? Before we had sanitation, before we had sewage, before we had you can even say before we had sterilization to kill bacteria and all these kind of things. And more natural-based vaccines, which we'll go into. Beyond that, we're actually not living very much longer at all. But, interesting question, are we living longer or are we dying longer? That's something to start asking yourself. The average lifespan of a man, I believe, is around, like, in at least in the Western world, is around between 58 and 70-ish, something like that, right? Women are slightly higher, right? Remember the other day I was talking about, I think it was yesterday, I was talking about the theories why women live longer than men, and the bleeding and bleeding out toxic blood, toxic iron out of the blood every month, that kind of thing, right? But even then, women are living like maybe a little bit longer, and a lot of that has to do with stress too, right? So what we want to do is essentially return back to our most noble state of being, which is just like a baby. And this conversation that we're going to go into is all about what are the things that actually take us out over time. What are the things that actually age the body? What increases, what accelerates the aging cycle exponentially? We already know what we can do to slow that down dietarily through high raw foods, whole foods, maybe some natural supplements, superfoods, water, all that kind of thing. But then now we need to talk about what are the things that recycle us out. Because no matter what, at some point, your clock is going to run out, right? Your chronological clock is going to run out. So we want to understand what are the things that biologically or environmentally take us out the quickest. So if we understand that, then we can start to wrap our head around how to inhibit that, how to create natural solutions to bypass that process or to slow it down realistically. We want to slow that process down so we can focus on what our destiny is, so we can focus on what our mission is and do more of that, just to throw ourselves more and more into what we love to do. And by the way, doing what you love is a huge catalyst for having the healthiest life ever. If you're not doing what you love to do, then you are already on a slippery slope. Especially if you've been doing it for 20 years, 30 years. You're already riding the